I am winning on all fronts limitlessly.
I have made tremendous improvement at work through delegating and empowering teams.
We started with the law of intentionality, which specifically makes it clear that growth cannot just happen. You have to be intentional about your growth.
CTL Africa Leadership brings you the Grow Journey, a series of masterclasses based on John C. Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. In this 10-week virtual growth accelerator, you will acquire the skills to thrive and flourish as you evolve into a more impactful and fulfilled individual. You will master the art of personal and professional development as you craft and execute your customized growth plan. Limited seats available. Register now for the next cohort.
Hey there, join the next cohort of CTL Ghana's growth journey.
The next cohort is coming on. Get involved and your life will never be the same.
Hello. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Platform. My name is Samuel Ayim of CTL Africa Leadership. CTL Africa Leadership is here to make a difference. You are all welcome to the Leadership Platform. The team and I are excited to be with you once again. This is our favorite time of the week when we get to gather around to share leadership lessons with you, where we gather around to bring you amazing leaders with ideas that will help transform your life. So if you're connected, please share the link with others, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and like our Facebook page so that other people would also know what is going on. Call your friends, call your boss, call your colleagues, call your team members, and learn together, because this evening we are going to have an amazing and important discussion going to be delivered by an amazing person also. So you don't want to miss any part of this. Please go ahead to introduce yourself and let us start rolling. Introduce yourself, whether you're joining on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're joining from. Just share with us your name and your location, where you're connecting from, and we will be very happy to announce you to the world. We know that many of you connect and you don't introduce yourself as such, but we want to know you. So please go ahead and introduce yourself. So once again, my name is Samuel Ayim. Now this evening, we are discussing an important subject. Tell me, has there been a time in your life where you just wanted somebody to just listen to you? Just listen to you without telling you anything, without giving you any instructions, without advising you on anything, and just wanted to be heard. Has there been a situation in your life where you have a discussion with a friend, a colleague, and you felt that you are not being heard? Has there been a situation in your life where you felt that you were really communicating, but it turns out that really nobody understood you? Well, communication is not just what is said, communication is also what is heard. And unless that loop is closed, there is no communication. What is said must be heard. And that is where listening connects the two. What is said and what is heard, in between the two is the art of listening. And many a time we miss it and we feel we've communicated when we have not. Or we feel we are doing our best, but we are missing it. And that is why this evening we are going to discuss the subject of listening. How do you listen? And we have an amazing personality, my good friend and partner, who is going to do justice to this subject. The speaker this evening has been on this platform a few times before, so she's no stranger. She's part of the team, CTL Africa leadership team. She's an amazing personality and a good friend. She loves people, and that's what I love about her. She loves people. She likes to support people. She likes to get people to grow. She spent over 2 decades of her life trying to help organizations embed proper corporate governance practices into their organizations. She serves several boards. In fact, she's set up her own corporate governance unit just so he can support boards and organizations so they will have proper corporate governance. Beside that, she is a John C. Maxwell certified coach and a Jack Canfield success trainer. Now, these two together should give you a clue why our speaker this evening is the most qualified. As a coach, she's helped so many people in her practice and has helped so many people to succeed in her success training. And listening is part of that. Well, if you are with us this evening, just welcome Catherine Engman, my good friend. Catherine, you are welcome once again to your own platform, the leadership platform. We are excited. You're looking so, like somebody would say, fantabulous.
Thank you so much for having me on your platform and for that wonderful introduction. For a minute, I wondered who you were talking about. Then I remembered it was me.
Oh, it's you. It's you.
It's
now, I mean, a lot of people know you, but we always also have some new people. So just give us just a brief of, yes, we've talked about you, but you're so dynamic, you have so many parts. Tell us just one thing that you want people to take away from who Catherine is.
Okay. I think you summarized it earlier when you said, I love people. And it's so true. If there's anyone I want people, if there's anything I want people to take away with, is that I'm truly vested in the success of others. And I just have a heart for helping and supporting people. That's who I am in a nutshell.
But where did this start from? Where did it come from? I mean, the love for people.
Actually, that's a great question. And I think where it stems from is I grew up in Ghana and I spent my first 2 years in high school here. In the old days, it wasn't SHS, it was Form 1 and 2. And then I moved to England. And I'm biracial. So coming from parents of two diverse cultures really gave me the ability to be able to connect and love people for just who they are rather than what they are. So I believe that's where it stems from. It stems from my diverse upbringing, actually, not accepting people for just being who they are.
Wow. And that's actually gives us an inkling into what you're going to talk about. And we believe that you would have had a practical experience. I mean, from two backgrounds, two races. I don't know if it's race, but that certainly would have created a certain challenge in terms of communication in the house among families and different things. And maybe you will share with us as you go along how this has formed your skills in listening and so on. So I won't take too much, I won't take the wind out of your sail. I would leave the platform to you, and then you will share with us what you want to share with us along the lines of how to improve our communication through listening as leaders. All right. So, guys, get ready. The plane is going to take off, and let us all, with a virtual applause, welcome my friend, Catherine Eggman, once again to the leadership platform. Thank you, Catherine, for doing this for us.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me here. Hey. Good evening, everyone. And I'm so delighted you are here. Today, I'm going to take you through the different levels of listening, how to listen with real intention, the keys to building rapport, and why listening and building rapport is a foundation for not just only leadership effectiveness, but success in your life overall. Why is it important that we listen to people? And this quote by my mentor, John C. Maxwell, that says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, really resonates with me. Because everybody, and I mean everybody, wants to be heard or seen. And listening actively and developing rapport with people is a way of helping people to feel heard and seen and cared for subsequently. So let me ask you a few questions. How many of these have you experienced or perpetuated? So you start describing a problem that you have, and you're talking to somebody, and the person just says, it is well, oh, it is well. How many of you have experienced that or have done that to someone else? Or you start describing a happy or painful experience you had with someone, and then you're interrupted immediately and told, oh yeah, you know, this thing happened to me too, and it takes the wind out of your sails. Have you ever experienced this or done this to someone else? How did you feel in these situations? Did you feel validated? Frustrated? Did you feel heard? Not heard? Well, if you've ever experienced one of those situations or ever done that to anybody, you would not have heard them. Because those things, interrupting people when they're speaking to share your own experience, yes, I know that we all do, people do that. We all do that because it's a way of us showing people that they're not alone, but it doesn't make the other person feel heard. And similarly, whenever I have picked up the phone to call someone and tell them about some issue that I'm going through, and they say, oh, it's as well, God is in control. Yes, I know they're trying to encourage me and they're trying to get me to be positive, when I feel frustrated because I haven't been heard. And listening to people and hearing them is the biggest gift, especially in this disconnected age, is the most precious gift we can give to anybody. There are 5 levels of listening, and I'm going to walk us through what these are. And then after that, I'm going to show us how to develop the highest form of listening. And it was Stephen Covey who said, most people do not listen to understand, but they listen to interrupt. And I'd like you to have that in the back of your mind as we go through this. The first level is ignoring. So you're having a conversation with somebody and you're having a conversation with somebody and the person ignores what you say, and then you carry on. This typically happens amongst couples, and the person then, your spouse then says, did you hear me? Oh yeah, look, what has happened to that painting over there? It's not very straight. Duh. That's completely ignoring you. The person hasn't heard you. Or for example, someone is talking to you and you're just typing on your phone at the same time. That is the lowest. In fact, that's a level 0. That's ignoring. Then level 1 listening is pretending to listen. So you pretend you're listening, but you're not. You know, there are other things going through your head, like, for example, have I sent that assignment to school? I haven't called the doctor. I need to call the doctor. Oh, I need to write my to-do list. You are there, but you are not there. That's level 1. You're pretending to listen. And I remember recently a CEO telling me that, you know, my people think that I am listening to them all the time, but actually I'm pretending not to listen. You know what? Everyone can tell when you're not listening, when you're pretending. People have an innate sense of smelling pretense. The next level of listening is selective listening. So this is where we listen to the person and we're interested in the conversation, but once the person's points don't agree with ours, we just lose interest and then we stop listening. That's selective listening. Third level of listening is actually a great level to start from, and this is attentive listening, where you're listening, but your cognitive mind is actually analyzing and judging what the person is saying. So attentive listening, yes, you're listening, but you're forming analytical arguments in your head or judgments about the person or what they're saying. Level 4 is a very high form of listening. And this is empathetic listening. And this is listening where you're putting yourself in the other person's shoes and coming from their experience and try to feel what it is that they're feeling. This is a great place to even start with. And in fact, listening empathetically is actually quite difficult. And it's not something that you can do 24/7. And what I'd like to say is that our levels of listening can go up or down depending on the situation, because listening at a level 4, and I'll show you level 5, is actually very difficult and takes a lot of energy. And level 5 listening, which is the highest form of listening, is active listening. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. Active listening is where you are really hearing someone. You are suspending all forms of judgment about the person. You are holding any analysis there's no holding any analysis, and you're truly present, listening with your ears, your body, your heart, and your soul. That is active listening. And one would probably say, how can listening be active? Surely listening is passive. No, listening at this level is actually an activity. There are different phases to active listening. And we'll illustrate this I'll illustrate this using an example. So for someone comes to you with an issue and they're recounting a whole drama about what happened at work. When you're actively listening, it's not like, oh yeah, it will be well, your boss was mean to you. It will be well, it shall be well, trust God. No. It's all about really trying to understand what happened. And you'll use questions like, what happened? My favorite one is, tell me more. Or, what do you mean? I'd like to hear your story. And when you do that, when you pause and say that to someone, they are more likely to open up. And I'll tell you that you shouldn't have your phone in your hand when you're listening to somebody, because it actually creates a barrier and distraction between you and the other person. Put the phone away and just listen and say, tell me more. And please, for those of you who might be on WhatsApp and sending WhatsApp messages at the same time as listening to someone saying, tell me more as you're WhatsApping, we can all smell a phony. So please, phones away, full concentration on that person. Tell me more. That really opens them up. Or what happened? Another part of active listening is when you're to retain. This phase is called retaining, where you're not interpreting what the person has said. Rather, you ask them questions like, how did that make you feel? What was your reaction? And here's the thing, whenever I have interpreted what somebody else is feeling, like for example, someone calls me with a very aggressive, hyper attitude, I say, look, you're angry. Whoa. Then they tell you, no, I'm not angry, right? So it's like, how did that make you feel? I even had that experience the other day on Tuesday when I was dealing with some challenges in the business. And one of my mentors called me and says, oh, Catherine, you're stressed. Actually, I'm not stressed. I feel really calm. So not interpreting what people are saying is key to active listening. And another phase, this part of active listening, is the response phase. And I want to state that this is not linear. Okay, conversations are cyclical. So it's not linear. You don't say, okay, comprehend, retain, respond. No, this is the free flow. In the response phase, you would use words like, for example, a friend of mine called me this morning and another one of her staff has left employment just after a week. And she was very frustrated. And she was recounting the story about how this person had handed in their notice, well, with no notice, or had left the work. And I said to her, this sounds like a really stressful situation for you. And I can see why you'd feel like that. And then she opened up again. Oh, yes, I mean, this was a 1-hour conversation, by the way, in the end. But she felt heard because I had responded to her appropriately. Another way of active listening, or to show that you are listening actively, is to paraphrase. And when I say paraphrase, I don't mean be a parrot and repeat everything the person says. You would use words like, again, sounds like it was. So for example, someone comes to you, an employee, and says, it seems like today we have a really bad situation on our hands. The bank isn't paying its customers and all the systems have gone down. And you would paraphrase that by saying, sounds like the bank is having some challenges and the systems are down. So don't be a parrot. Paraphrase to check understanding. Now, there's paraphrasing and there's also reflecting back. I use paraphrasing to make sure that my interpretation or the person feels heard, that I've interpreted what they're telling me correctly. Reflecting back here is more like labeling the emotion. So, for example, my friend who called me earlier on today because one of her staff had just exited a company without notice. It's like, okay, sounds like, and then sounds like you feel unappreciated as a boss. And she said, yes, I do. So this is here about labeling the emotion that the person might be feeling. And then at the end of active listening, at the end of it all, you summarize. You summarize the whole story. I was going to say, round up the whole story into a summary, because some people can come with some very long stories, and it's your goal, if you're listening, is to be able to summarize and say, okay, so what I heard you say is X. This is what happened. How it made you feel was this. And this is what you wish you could have done instead, or this is what you'd like to do. And then you check, is that right? And then just keep silent. Silence, I think it was someone who said, I can't remember who said it. Of course, it's someone who said, every quote is someone who said, it is the space between the notes that makes the music. And when you're actively listening, pausing, after asking questions or summarizing or reflecting back, just pausing and allowing that person to fill the space is really important. And even when someone is talking and they're talking a lot, even just being silent can get them to speak even more. And before the self-pause, there's the probing aspect. And when you ask open-ended questions, try not to ask people why questions, because why are you feeling like that? Why do you think your boss is a jerk? No why questions if you can. Rather, keep your questions open-ended. So what was it that led to your boss yelling at you? What were you going through when you responded to that person in that way? What was running through your mind as that person yelled at you? Open-ended questions, no why questions. So I'll summarize those steps again. We'll go back to those steps. In the reframing, we'll go back again, just go through. Comprehend, retaining, make sure you respond appropriately. Restate, don't paraphrase. Reflect back, summarize. Probing questions, no why questions, and then also employing silence. I mentioned earlier that this is not a linear thing. It's not linear, it's cyclical. And these are all the phases that you will employ when you are listening actively. So active listening is really difficult. I must admit that it's a skill that I'm still working on, and I'm having to learn constantly by reflecting every single day, asking myself, how well did I listen? And some days I didn't listen very well, because as very, very busy leaders, we just want to get things done. The house is on fire, work needs to get done, you need to attend meetings, you've got so many balls that you're juggling. So it's so difficult to listen. I know. And here are some tips. But before we get into the tips, I'm just going to take a quick break for some adverts. I'll be back in a second. Don't go away.
Get your early bird ticket for Live to Lead 2024. From now till April 15th, you get 20% off. Register now for either virtual, hybrid, or group tickets. Visit our website www.livetoleadghana.com. Live to Lead 2024. Leading for transformation. Renewed minds change lives. See you there.
Okay, here are the tips. I hope you're still there. First thing is to suspend your self-interest and ego. Remember that listening is not about you, it's about the other person. And trust me, there are no boring people. You know, sometimes we think that some people might be really boring. Well, there are no boring people. There are no boring people, just boring listeners. I've had friends, and yeah, I've got such a diverse group of friends because of my diverse background, and I love all people. But there's some of my friends that really don't like some of my other friends, or they think they're boring. And they say to you, Catherine, how can you hang around with that person? They're so boring. There's nothing interesting about them. And yet, I find everybody fascinating. I think human beings are the most fascinating creatures on the planet. So there are no boring people, they're just boring listeners. And it's really important as well as suspending your self-interest and your ego, is to clear your head of judgments and preconceived responses. Because I know I've done it, and I'm sure you have, is as the person is starting to talk, oh my goodness, this person is speaking really slowly. I wish they'd hurry up. Oh, why are they talking about that? Well, what kind of problem is that? That's nothing. Oh gosh, please, they just need to get this thing sorted. It's their fault. It's not that other person's fault. Why are they complaining about this? How many of you have ever done that? Well, I've certainly done that. So clear your head of judgments and preconceived responses. Everyone sees the world differently to us. My context is very different to yours. It's very different to Sam's. It's very different to Sarah Jessie's. It's very different to Joy's, because we've all had a completely different upbringing. We've had different influences, different voices, and everybody has a different perspective. And it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It means that they just have a different perspective. And so as we embrace people, listening to them, it's important to remember that we all see the world differently. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay. Don't be addicted to being right. We all want to win an argument, and it makes us feel good. It makes us feel good to be always right. And yes, I know I've been accused of being a little too known, right? Yeah, sometimes as a boss, you're allowed to be too known. And it's so important not to be addicted to being right. Some people want to be right at all costs. And here, that really hinders active listening, is when you have a need to always be right. It was Maya Angelou who said that people don't remember what you said, they'll only remember what you made them feel. And I paraphrase. And it's so true. People will only remember what they think they heard, but not truly what they heard. And an example of this is, At school, when we were in high school, there were 4 of us actually who sat very close together in the same classroom. And what's so interesting is there was a particular incident, and every single one of us has a completely different recollection of that incident. 4 of us in the same classroom, same incident, every single person reported the incident differently. So a key tip is not to assume that we're going to remember what others are saying. Sometimes we're only remembering what they think, what we think they say. As I mentioned earlier, context is different. So do allow space for different perspectives. For example, I've grown up differently. I lived in the UK. I relocated to Ghana. And I must admit that when I first arrived to Ghana, I was one of those returnees that I don't like anymore. It's like, oh, what? Why is everything like that? Who the hell is this? Ghana, this is always wrong. The taxi drivers are always cheating you. This. I was constantly full of complaints because I wasn't allowing space for different perspectives. Now I'm so accommodating. It's like I've really grown and changed through it. And I realized it's allowing space for a different perspective. Uncle Sam is going to have a perspective that doesn't relate with me, but I'm also going to have this perspective that doesn't relate with him. Allowing that space allows us to listen deeply. And one thing is not to try to interpret what people might mean. It was one of my mentors, I think it was Paul Martinelli, because I've got so many mentors, sometimes I get all their voices confused. I think he said that people do not say, oh, I can't remember what he said now, but don't interpret what people might mean. Yes, he said, this doesn't always mean that. So just because somebody may look at you quizzically doesn't necessarily mean that it's related to that thing. So do not place too much attention on trying to interpret what someone said. We've all had those situations where someone has maybe used a certain tone of voice on us or reacted in a certain way, and we've interpreted that to mean something. Actively listening means that you are not interpreting what people might mean. And what you do here is to rather ask, use some of the steps I mentioned earlier, reframe as open-ended questions to find out what it is they actually mean rather than by interpreting. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that active listening is a key skill in rapport building. Oh, yes. So active listening is key to building rapport. What is rapport? Well, I liken rapport to a dance. You know, when you have rapport with someone, when you have a conversation, and that conversation can last forever. That conversation feels like a dance between you two, like you're in sync, like you're in a rhythm. That's rapport. And deep listening is actually key in rapport building. There are other aspects to rapport building. What is rapport? Rapporte, rapporte comes from the Greek language, which means to carry back to another person an experience of themselves. I'm sure you've heard it said that people like themselves, right? People like people who are like themselves. Well, rapport building is a way of creating the sense that you are like someone else. So even if you're not really like somebody, you can use these rapport building techniques to make people feel that you are in sync with them and you carry back to that person an experience of themselves. And this is another definition. It's being willing to understand or experience another person's view of their world as if you were that person. And I'll show you how it's done. But before that, remember that only 55% of our communication is in our body language. Only 55%. I actually found that really quite surprising, that only 55% of the meaning of our communication is in our body language. The other 38% is in how we speak. And did you know, I didn't know this actually until a few years ago. Hopefully I know it now because I'm teaching it. Only 7% meaning of our communication is in the words themselves. Only 7%. So 55% is in our body language, 38% is in how we speak, 7% of the meaning of our communication is in the words themselves, which means that actually 93% of our communication of meaning is unconscious. If 7% meaning, if there's only 7% meaning of our communication in the words, 93% of the meaning of our communication is unconscious. Sit in that. Because of that, knowing these rapport building techniques can help you communicate with people better. And there are 3 ways to build rapport. There's physiology, voice tonality, and the words that you use. And we've covered some of that in the active listening, but it's your physiology, which is with your body, the tone of your voice, and the actual words that you use. When you're building rapport with physiology, there are 3 ways that you can do that. And with physiology, we mean with the body. It's by matching, by mirroring, and crossover mirroring. So what matching means is, for example, is that you and I are having a conversation, and then you raise your right hand, so I will raise my right hand. That's matching. That's how you build rapport with somebody. When you meet someone, body language, you'll do that. And actually, for those of you who, I'm sure when you first met your spouses and you fell in love for the first time, you would actually build rapport naturally. It's like, you can always tell when there's chemistry between people. It's because of this rapport, and you can intentionally create it. So there's a matching. Mirroring is where you will, so remember, matching is, it's like for like. So for example, you would lift your right hand and I'd lift my right hand. With mirroring, you'd lift your right hand and I'll do the same with my left. So that's how you mirror. So it's not, I wouldn't be copying you exactly, but I would be mirroring your actions. And there's also something called crossover mirroring. Crossover mirroring is where someone comes to you, they're really, really angry, they're tapping on their feet and they're speaking really, really angry, and you do not like the state that they're in. So what you might do then is you don't want to use the same body language because they're really angry, but you may do something like, for example, tap with your pen to match maybe their anger or the energy with which they are using. That's what crossover mirroring is. It's where you don't want to take on the other person's energy. So if you copy everything that they do, or you match or mirror, you might take on that kind of energy. So crossover mirroring is really, you would use a technique such as maybe tapping your pen when the person's really angry, but you're going with the beat of their body, or the beat, the rhythm of their voice. That's what I'm looking for. Yes, that's how you do crossover mirroring. And that's a way of also calming the person down. With voice tonality, it's also doable. So when you're talking to somebody, It's using the tone of voice, right? Or the pitch, how fast they're speaking. So when someone comes to you really urgent or talks really fast, you also talk really fast back. Or when the person speaks really slowly, you also speak slowly back. That's when you match the speed, right? So there's a tone, whether they're, oh, well, how are you today? Yes, I'm very well, as much as possible without sounding fake. And also the volume, matching someone's volume. You've got some people that are very quiet talkers. And so when building rapport with them, also speak quietly. And never, ever, ever, ever try to match an accent. Oh my goodness. Some people think that they're building rapport with me and then they try to copy the way I speak. And it triggers me because I know they're just being fake and I feel like they're teasing me. So do not ever try to match an accent. That's a point. So we have tone or pitch. So you can build rapport with a voice tonality by matching the person's tone or pitch, by the speed at which they speak and the volume. And another way is also to be fully present and listen. As someone is talking to you, again, as I said, you suspend judgment and you listen deeply. You listen with your head, with your heart, with your feet. In fact, what I do when I'm listening to someone is I imagine myself as a big, giant ear listening. And I imagine my ear stretching across the world, being able to listen to everything. And when you listen like that, you can even hear when someone changes their breath or changes the pace in which they speak. You can hear so much just by listening. We also have something that we refer to in the coaching world called verbal softness as a way of building rapport. So someone, for example, comes to you with an issue or complains about the boss. Oh, why did you do that? Why did you speak to your boss in that way? That can be harsh. Use verbal softness. We call them verbal softness, like leading with, I'm curious. How is it that you spoke to your boss in that way? Or, would you permit me to ask a question? So asking permission before asking the question can make questions that could be harsh land very softly. Okay. So using verbal softness and also, as I said, volume earlier. When I say volume, by dropping your voice sometimes it just creates something that makes someone feel really heard. So for example, you're talking up, loud, and the person has an issue and you're going backwards and forwards, and then you just drop your voice. I'm really curious. How is it that this happened? And the person then just relaxes, and that's another way of building rapport. Okay, we've covered that. So remembering again, I guess, summarizing those tips, that when you're actively listening, suspending your self-interest and your ego is so important. It's not about you, it's about the other person. There are no boring people, just boring listeners, and clearing your head of judgments and preconceived responses. And all too quickly, our time has already come to an end. I can't believe it's already almost time. We covered the different levels of listening. Remember, you had level 0, which is ignoring, and we've all done that, through to the highest level of listening, which is active listening. We've covered tips to help you improve your listening, keys to building rapport through matching, mirroring other body language, and also tone of voice. And I hope that as we've gone through this, you've really come to understand why these skills are important for leaders. And if you haven't picked up the reason why, I'll reaffirm it again, that Leadership is a skill. Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less, as John Maxwell says. If we want to influence, if we want to create impact, it's really important that people feel heard and they feel seen when we're with us. This helps us develop charisma. It helps people wanting to connect with us. And it helps us then become more influential and elevate the impact that we have in the world. Although I've covered all those tips, these are little sidebar tips for leaders that want to network with what I call the big cats, or some of you might refer to as the big fish. Other ways of what not to do when you're networking. Whenever you meet somebody, a big fish or a cat, whatever, never ask, what do you do? That can sometimes come across as so rude and so judgmental that, and even if you don't want to network with big cats, with anyone that you meet, never really ask, what do you do? Because that's a way of people kind of dismissing you, labeling you. Some people don't even feel labeled when you ask them, what do you do? In fact, when people ask me, what do I do? Half the time I respond, actually, I wish I knew, because sometimes I really wonder, what do I do? So rather than asking, what do you do? When you're meeting someone for the first time, ask them, I'm curious, how do you spend most of your time? And then they may open up and say, I work, and then you can build rapport that way. Another thing, let's avoid the use of the word nice. So rather than saying for Joy, who's on the phone, Joy, your dress is nice, is to use the word, that dress is very beautiful on you. Let's expand our vocabulary beyond the word nice. How was your day? It was a nice day. Avoid using the word nice. Nice is not a way to build rapport. Let's use adjectives. So Joy, you look glorious in that dress. And avoid me too. For example, when Uncle Sam was talking earlier about his day and how he'd been to a funeral in Koforidua somewhere. Yes, that was it, Koforidua. He'd been to a funeral, had to go to Koforidua and come back to host this. I actually wanted to say, me too. I've also had a really hectic day, And then, you know what that would have done? That would have taken away his experience and made it about me. So avoid using me too. Let's not make it about us, making it about others. And as much as possible, start sentences with you. So rather than saying, that's a nice dress, again, it would be, you look beautiful in that dress, or you look exquisite in that dress. As much as possible, let's start sentences with you, because then you makes the person feel heard and appreciated. As we wrap up, you've heard a lot. I just want you to tell me what there's one skill, if you can put it in the chat or let me know via LinkedIn, what is one of these skills, just one, that you'll take away and implement? Because we hear a lot of things, and without implementing, we just become fat. We just become fat on the word or fat on knowledge. So just take away one skill. What is the one skill that you're going to take away and implement? And let me know how you get on. My name's Catherine Engman. I'm a corporate governance and executive coach, and it is my mission in the world to simplify this thing called corporate governance. And I am so blessed and feel so grateful to have been here with you this evening. Thank you.
I am winning on all fronts limitlessly.
I have made tremendous improvement at work through delegating and empowering teams.
We started with the law of intentionality, which specifically makes it clear that growth cannot just happen. You have to be intentional about your growth.
CTL Africa Leadership brings you the Grow Journey, a series of masterclasses based on John C. Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. In this 10-week virtual growth accelerator, you will acquire the skills to thrive and flourish as you evolve into a more impactful and fulfilled individual. You will master the art of personal and professional development as you craft and execute your customized growth plan. Limited seats available. Register now for the next cohort.
Hey there! Join the next cohort of CTL Ghana's growth journey.
The next cohort is coming on. Get involved and your life will never.
Wow, that was amazing. That was great. Catherine, thank you so very much. That was really helpful. And I know that we have learned. I kept writing before I realized you have finished, and I was still writing.
Oh, Sam.
It's great. And I have a few questions, so I'm going to come back to the questions. But guys, Catherine has asked, what of the skills that she has shared with us, just one thing that you are going to take away, you're going to do better. Just one that you're going to do. And I think I am going to start asking my wife, tell me more. Because sometimes when she's talking and I think it's too much, and before she's finishing, I'm moving away and say, I'm talking to you, you're going, and I feel it's too much. But now I know that, I have to stop and ask, okay, tell me more.
And mean it genuinely, Sam. Mean it genuinely. Not just tell me more, fake tell me more. Like,
tell me more. All right. So this is going to be interesting, guys. But these are great skills. People are paying good dollars for these things that Catherine is sharing with us, So please, let's take these things seriously on board. Let me see who is in the house and what are people saying, and I'll come back and share my questions. But share also your questions that you have, because Catherine is ready to give us even more. I know she has a lot to say, but because of time, she has to summarize, but she's going to give us even more meat to some of the things if you come up with great questions, okay? And I think that is one of the things she taught us, that in listening actively, we should be asking questions. Ask questions so that you would be able to. So let's ask Catherine questions so she knows we've heard her. No, be so. All right. I have
so funny. Yeah.
I have my good friend Kwesi Asaramuako joining all the way from Italy. Thank you so very much. Paku Francis is from, I hear this is the longest university name in the world, Amstead. That's even the summary of the name, Kumasi. And I have James Biwire. I hope I pronounced this well, from Kampala in Uganda. We're all over the world. Rosalind from Accra is here. I have Charles joining from Ghana. Kojo Bwampong, also from Accra. Inosa Ajayi from Cotonou, Benin. We have Grace Katamani. Says hi, Catherine, and hi, Sam. Hi, Grace, how are you? Our good friend Sarah is always here with us from Geneva. He says, you ask a question whether we have said it's well. And she says she has done this before to someone. And I have, oh, don't worry, it's well. I'll take care of you, no problem. And you think you're helping, but apparently we are not doing good there. Lakwe is here. It's great to join today. And Paul Asiedu is watching also from Ghana. Rosalind practices all the time. She does this, done it, and it's been done to me, you know. So we're learning to unlearn some of these habits. Ivan Sodun from Kaswa is here. Philip Kwe is watching from the University of Ghana, Legon, the only university in Ghana. Haja Alima Sagito is here. To all listeners and CTL leadership team. Happy Eid listening from Tamale. Happy Eid to you too, Hajia. Conrad Kakraba, this is phenomenal. Thanks for sharing these insights. And that's from Conrad, means it's great because she is also a communicator. And Joyce says it is the space between the notes that makes the music. And this is a quote from what you said, the power of silence. How well did I listen? All right. Human beings are the most fascinating creatures on earth. And I think this is when you said, people are different, people have different perspectives and so on. Indeed, we're different. Dorosata says, watching from Accra, thanks for sharing always. Charlie Nete, I've missed a lot for not being here on time. Charlie, don't worry. The recording is available right on Facebook and YouTube. Please, right now, please like our pages and subscribe to the YouTube. Do it right now. Catherine is going to answer your questions. So I'm looking for your questions. I have a lot of them for her. Isaac Ayiku Kwashi. This is very educative and insightful. I'm really learning a lot. And this is from Tanzania. Anastasia Akuma Safo says, awesome tips. And Lakwe says, I wonder what the best way to effectively communicate with someone who only takes things seriously when they are stressed on. So that's one question there already for you. There are some people you have to just stress on the thing before they take it seriously. How do you communicate with such people? All right. So that's from Lakwe. My biggest takeaway is that when listening, it's not about me. And that's actually very, very good takeaway. It's not about you. All right. Kojo Buampong. Key takeaway is communicating with your body language, which improves my chances of getting my message across because that makes up majority of the communication. And this is actually one of the great information that we should capture because, as Catherine said, 98% of the time when you're communicating, actually you're unconscious because sometimes your body language and the tone and the volume of is where majority of the communication is. So thank you so much, Kojo, for lifting that for us. Hajia, I'm taking home more questions and rephrasing. That's actually also very, very good that we learn how to ask more questions because when you're asking questions, it means you've heard the person. Rosalind, my biggest takeaway is combining effectively attentive and active listening. That's going to be a powerful combination, Rosalind. And Grace says listening actively and communicating back by summarizing what I heard from the other person to make them feel heard. That's actually very good. You're able to summarize what the person is saying. He say yes, 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 and sometimes he feels that yeah, you really heard me. Thank you so much, Grace, for that. Sarah adds probing to understand is my takeaway. So sometimes Catherine has taught us don't assume, don't try to give meanings. If you're not sure, just ask, probe. Let ask, then let the person tell you exactly what he means. Don't assume what he means. Okay? And then you draw conclusions that are wrong from that. Ask more questions. Florence Edu says there are no boring people, just boring listeners. And this is that was a powerful quote, but I have a question on that. So when we come back, after you've answered Mrs. Lakwe, I would ask my question. Is it true that there are no boring people? So I've seen some of them. So
We all have, right?
all right. Elom says thanks for sharing. And Tete Junior Anthony says, me too. Concept. Attends, qu'est-ce qu'il dit? The Me Too
Me too.
concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Me Too concept. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some people say Me Too.
Yeah.
All right. So let's answer Miss Lakwe. But thank you so much, Catherine. These are great insight, and people are learning a lot from here. So how do you communicate with people who only understand the language of stressing and insisting before they take what you're saying seriously? How do you get their attention?
So remember that we were talking about active listening and rapport building.
Yes.
And so now you have somebody who is only ever their perspective. Remember, we all have a different perspective. And there's some people who can only relate to being spoken to in a certain way. So remember that we should treat people, this principle, is it we talk about the golden principle, which is, it's not to so much as treat people how you want to be treated, but treat people how they want to be treated.
That's a diamond principle.
Diamond principle. I knew you would know the answer. Yes, the diamond principle. Yes.
The golden principle is to treat people as you want to be treated. The diamond principle is treat people as they want to be treated.
Absolutely. And we have people that communicate in very different ways. You, Sarah, Jess, and I, we know about the DISC model, where you have the dominating style, the influencing, the supportive, and then the compliant. And what I find is that some people, the dominant styles, need to be spoken to back in that, that dominant, because that's how they communicate. So it's really about understanding people's communication styles and communicating back to them without being rude, but using the same type of energy that they want to be communicated from. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think Lakwe will come back, but the point that you made, which is actually very key, is understanding people's communication styles, because people are different. Some people like direct communication. They want you to go straight. So if you're going round, you're losing them. And some people actually like you to say so many things before you go to the point. So if you're just going direct, later on. So I guess the point is learn the person's communication style. How do the people want to hear you? And it's not about you, because you want the person to hear you. So if the communication is about me, then you just want you, but you want the person also to hear you. So learn about the person and speak to the person in a way that gives the person's attention. But
and also remember but back to that point that I've been in a situation where there's a situation and someone has told me, with this person, you have to treat them like this. That's the only way they'll hear you. And then, but yet I've still been myself, being as natural as possible and being able to get the best out of that person. So they're like, well, how come it works for you? Then they start saying, it's because you're a brony, so they'll only listen to you. They're not listening to us. But I believe that everybody has a lever, and it's about finding that lever and getting that, and then that way they can really open up. And sometimes when the person is not really doing what you're doing, or you have to beat them over the head, is because you haven't built up the rapport with them. You're not really understanding them. You've not connected with them.
And you also talk, when you talk about rapport, you talk about kind of rephrasing, you playing back the person to themselves, so they feel like you are sending, you're speaking their language, you're sending their spirit back to them.
Exactly.
So you're kind of having, your spirits are connected, and that's where rapport comes in. And when the person, when there is no rapport, communication actually becomes difficult. So, so that's when you're talking over the head and so on. So connect before you begin to send a message. And when you're sending a message, when there's no connection, then there's going to be a challenge. Am I a good student?
Sam, you know this thing. You know it. You
All right.
teach
So,
it.
Abigail, sorry that you've been having connection issues. The link will be shared again, and you can pick it from our platforms. And Grace, is there a technique for keeping eye contact? Is there a technique for keeping eye contact? That's right.
Culturally, when I first came to Ghana, I used to really struggle because I'll be talking to people and they wouldn't look me in the face. And I used to think, they won't look me in the eye. And I used to think it was so rude that they wouldn't look me in the eye. But from the UK, it's like, you look people in the eye. Is there a technique to keeping eye contact? It's really weird to sit there and just look at the person's eyes all the time. That's a bit freaky. So I find that it's good. You look in the eyes a few seconds, then you put your eyes down, then you just look again, put your eyes. So you're not constantly maintaining. But I focus on the person's, I just focus on the person's hair and just trying to look at them. And there's another little trick. If, for example, I'm just trying to do this. If you look at the person's my right eye and I look at your left eye, that makes you feel more bonded to me. If I look at our different, like, cross eyes. So I use my right eye to look at your left eye. I use your left eye to look at my right eye. And you know why that is? You know, when we're babies, right? And as a suckling mother, you're looking at your child through that, different eye. It helps people actually form a lot really deeper bonds when you look at the opposite eye.
Yeah. And you talked about mirroring. You talk about mirroring.
So that's mirroring. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's not just about looking in the eye, it's also about mirroring. Like, for example, a trick that I use is when someone starts scratching their hair, I also have a little head scratch. Or someone puts a finger on their chin. I mean, just a few seconds later, I'll put my finger on my chin. You just do those little tricks and they work. I'm giving all my secrets away.
Well, it's good. That's the leadership platform. That's why we brought you here, so that you can pick all the brains. Okay, Lakwe says everyone has a lever that does answer my question. Great. So, Catherine, one of my questions is, you talk about labeling. Label what a person is saying, but at one breath you're saying we should not be, analyzing and interpreting the person. So it's labeling, not. If you don't analyze, how do you label? If you don't interpret, how do you label? I'm just trying to reconcile them so that we understand what the labeling is actually, so that people know where's the difference. Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, the labeling and analyzing is, for example, the person. I'm trying to use. I'm trying to use an example. Let me use the one that I had this morning, where a friend's employee had left them very suddenly, and she calls me, and she's in a panic. If I had said, for example, it sounds like you are panicking, right? It sounds like you're panicking. That is labeling. In a way, that's labeling the situation. Whereas I said, okay, it sounds like this is a very frustrating experience for you. So labeling the emotion slightly than telling her what she's doing. So the labeling is like judging, like you're panicking, or it sounds like you're stressing. Whereas, it sounds like this could be a stressful situation for you.
Okay.
Right. And then the person will say, okay, no, maybe not so much. No, it's not so stressful, but X, Y, Z versus you're stressed. Oh, you're stressed. Calm down. That's not, sounds like, yes.
Great. And Catherine, Sarah shares that labeling, like you are explaining, actually relates to the emotions, how the person is feeling. And the person, sometimes people don't know how to describe how they are feeling. And when you put your finger on it for them, it helps them to process what's going on with them. And they feel grateful that, yes, you're right. You see that I'm angry. You see I'm upset. You see I'm there. So I think that explains it. But analyzing is when you are analyzing the person, try to draw your own conclusions for your own sake and try to argue and win and so on, trying to listen to respond. That is where we have been advised is not proper. All right. So Kin Akim says, wonderful guest, talented Catherine. I'm happy to have the pleasure of meeting her and knowing her. Great. So, Catherine is wonderful. When you are able to, let me bring Sarah just in case she has a question. But the question about not having boring people. Can you explain it a bit more? How do you have boring listeners and not have? If the person is boring, I used to have a lecturer in school. She was so boring, and by the half of the class, people are gone. So is she not a boring communicator? Is it because we the students were boring?
She's not. Let's not label her. And there you go. I've interrupted you. Let's not label her with the tag boring. That she delivered her material in a way that caused boredom amongst you. And here's the thing, Sam. There was this girl I remember working in the early stages of my career, and I wouldn't name her just in case she's working, but everybody in the company, and literally like we had 10,000 people in the company, everybody in the company knew her as the boring, most miserable person. Nobody wanted to hang out with her. She didn't have any friends, and yet I managed to saw her and I realized actually that she was a really interesting person because I managed to tap into what she enjoyed. She loved bird watching. And so I would get her and open up to ask her things about her weekend and her bird watching, which was not exactly the most interesting subject for me at the time, but it really opened her up. You see, so it wasn't that she was just boring because to everyone else because they hadn't taken the time to find out her interests. And once she started talking about her interests, oh my goodness, she would be so passionate.
Absolutely. And Sarah, I brought Sarah out because she shared that you should separate the person from the behavior. So he's not boring. Maybe the way he communicates is boring, but it's not a boring person. All right, Sarah. Any thoughts, any questions for Catherine?
No, it is brilliant. Catherine has really categorized everything for us, given us actionable things for us to do. So I really love it, and I just want to commend her. And the only thing I want to say is that just as our mentor John Maxwell says, we are people of value who value people. So this issue of people being boring, we value everyone. So when you place that 10 on the value, the 10 on the head of that person, you are valuing that person and you see that that person will return the value back to you. So Catherine, brilliant time that we've had with you. Thank you so much. And to the audience,
thank you. Everybody is a 10. Everybody is a 10. Yes. And that's so true. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that. Let me see if there are any more comments or questions that would come in. Please, Catherine has a lot inside of her, so pull it out before she goes away. Okay, Benjamin Anabiok, it is my pleasure having such wonderful leaders come my way. All right, thank you so much, and we're happy that you are here and you're learning. All right, so let me just ask my last question. And Catherine, who what's the most I mean, describe for us the most difficult communication situation you've had, where you were trying to hear and listen, but it's difficult for you. And sometimes you really don't want to listen. Do we always have to listen?
No. You know
When
what,
we
Sam?
really don't
We
want
have
to listen.
exactly. Sam, we're human beings and we're not perfect. And what I say is that everything it's a process. And there's some days that one gets it right, and there's some days that one doesn't. And it is with awareness and reflection, reflection leading to awareness, that helps each day become better. Trust me, Sam. You know what it's like running a business in Ghana. There are some days where you cannot hear anybody's excuses, and you go for it. What my staff say to me though is that even when in those days that I'm triggered, they know that, oh, Madame is coming from a place of love. So they just take it. They don't even, it doesn't even hurt them. But coming up for situations, oh boy, Sam, in this corporate governance space, there have been many situations where I haven't been heard. I've been talking and I haven't been listened to. And there are times where I've had, and particularly when you're dealing with legal stuff, sometimes you have to have full-on wars. But what happens in those circumstances is that I state my position, I hear them and say, okay, I hear you, and I can understand why you think that way, and this is the fact. If they don't get it, it's okay. It's okay. It's about them. So in that space, you have a lot of intimidation. But at the early part of my career, I did feel intimidated standing up to big board directors. And that was one of the reasons why I embarked on the coaching and leadership development journey, was to help improve myself so that I could influence better. And it certainly paid off.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Great. Now, Charlie Nete is asking, if I understand, it means communication is always about the other person. Is that the situation?
Absolutely.
What about me?
No, because the other person has got to hear you, haven't they?
Okay. Yeah.
So communication is not about me. It's about you.
Yeah.
It's about others.
Yeah. Because without the other person, there is no communication actually.
Exactly. And remember, exactly. And was it Jim Rohn who said, if you can help everyone get what they want, you'll eventually get everything you want. Because when people feel heard, when they feel seen, when they feel appreciated, Sam, they will do anything for you. We know that. I will do anything for you because I can call you, like Sarah Jessie. Oh my goodness, the two of you. I absolutely love the two of you. I will do anything for both of you.
Yeah. Thank you
and
so much.
Can I make a point? And even the way you're talking now, that's making you feel heard and loved and appreciated. So that was a good trick.
Thank you. So I'm a good student, so I'm learning. All right. So Charlie, that's your answer there. The communication is a circle. If the other person is out of it, you can't communicate effectively. And in fact, I mean, as we're going to wind up, I just want to go back to the quote that Catherine started with, which is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So in communication, you can know everything, you can be the expert, but if you don't care about the people enough to listen to them, then no matter what you know, you to stay in your own head. So we stay in your own head. You can't transmit it. All right. She Roxy, thank you, Catherine. When you feel the other person is not listening, how do you deal with a situation where the speaker insists they are listening?
Okay. So you know what you know, what you know, what you know. And I know that sounds like it's a really, really stubborn thing, but you know, you know, you know. And there have been many circumstances. You know that they're not listening because they're tapping on their phone or doing whatever it is. But you know what? You just, okay, they're not listening. It's okay. And I just shut down. You know that sometimes I've actually stopped talking mid-sentence because I can tell I'm not being listened. And you know, people don't even notice. Oh my God, that hurts. So you know what? It's about them. And in those circumstances, I may feel a little hurt, but you know what? The person's not ready to listen. And it's okay. It's not about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're not listening, you have to read the mood and say, okay, maybe not the right time to keep talking. All right. So we're getting to the top of the hour. Okay, there's one coming from like, what if the person you are listening to is really draining and consistent at it? Yes, so some people can just drain your energy.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the boundary? And they just want, they come in and they're carrying on you, they are crying and they're doing all sorts of things and they're pouring everything on you. You two have your own
Yeah.
problems. What do you
I
do?
100%. And you know, and I like the way that is it like way who asked the question framed
Yes.
it. And she said, and they
Yeah.
are consistent at it. Because Sam, I know that I have called you and I've cried and I've put all my stuff on you, right?
Yes.
We know that. But I haven't done it consistently. And what I have is
Absolutely.
in life, there are two types of people. There are energy drainers, the energy suckers, and the energy givers. And the truth
Yeah.
is that I limit my interaction with energy suckers because honestly, it takes too much energy to be me. And yes, I want to listen to people, but not have them drain my energy by blaming and complaining. So I
Yeah.
actually do an audit every year and I have the energy suckers and I limit. And there's some people that I love dearly, but they'll only get about an hour of me a month because
Yeah.
they're energy suckers. Yeah. So
Yeah.
limit the responsibility, the onus is on you
Yeah.
to manage that
Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that's great. This category, I mean, this type of people, you have to have your energy to be able to transmit it. You don't want people to suck your energy all the time. And Sarah, right, create boundaries. Sometimes we need to have boundaries, but not too high walls so that nobody sees you behind. Let's have some doors. All right. So at this point, we're going to ask Catherine to give us a parting shot. What does she? What's the icing on the cake for us? And then we will
Okay.
bring the curtains down. Catherine.
A parting shot. It's actually what Sarah Jesse reminded us of earlier that everybody is a 10 and to place a value of 10 on everyone's head. But even with that context, it's also important for us to put in place our own boundaries so people do not suck the life-giving energy out of us. So that brings me to that point that context is also important. So it's not just about applying everything blindly, but about having the discernment to understand your context and what works best for you. That's it.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Great conversation. Guys, we're always open for more questions. And a few things have been shared. We're still running the early bird for Live to Late. Please get your 20% off before we shoot to the top. Don't waste. We've just closed the growth journey, the cohort number 8, and we're registering for cohort number 9. Please grab your seats. A few people have already taken their seats. We are aiming to to start by 1st of May. So please get on board. Also go to our website, which is revamped with great lessons where you can navigate. Go to CTL Africa Leadership and look for information. Call us, tell your HR to invite us. We will come and share lessons with them. If you need coaching, Sarah is here, Catherine is here, several coaches are here. Please let us know and we would help you. And on that note, I just want to thank everybody for making it tonight. Until next week, when we come your way with another great leader, with another great lesson, I want to say have a good night and have some time tomorrow to find a place for God as we go on to Sunday. Good night. God bless you. Bye-bye.